The story begins with a monologue from Henry, who tells us his story is an unlikely one, but as he has lots of time, he is going to tell us about it. Something happened to him 2 centuries ago that transformed him. His life is just like ours except for one small difference. It never ends. Over the years, he has become obsessed with understanding death. However, he believes he must find the key to free himself from his endless existence. That's why he works at the New York forensic office. We follow Henry as he enters a subway station one morning. He sits down next to an attractive young woman and greets her in Russian with a cheerful, "Good morning." She looks surprised but returns the greeting and asks how he knew she was Russian. Henry had noticed a smudge of chocolate around her mouth. He tells her good luck at her performance tonight, and she seems impressed he knew. He explains he noticed calluses on her slender fingers, suggesting she plays the cello. The woman is very impressed by Henry and, as she stands up to leave, asks him to come to her performance and go out for drinks afterward. Henry says yes to her invitation. But suddenly, the train crashes, killing everyone on board, including Henry. The monologue continues, showing us that Henry is unusual. He doesn't die permanently. He has lived a whole life, fallen madly in love, had his heart broken, fought in wars, and witnessed more deaths than one should. His story began 200 years ago on a ship. He was a doctor examining an enslaved person for a suspected illness. He concluded the man only had a fever, but the captain still ordered the crew to throw him overboard. Henry refused to let them do it and tried to stop them, but he was killed and thrown to the sharks. Ever since then, every time Henry dies, he wakes up naked in a body of water. He experiences everything, love, pleasure, pain, just like anyone else. In the present day, Henry wakes up in the river. He finds some clothes and is then picked up by his old friend Abe. Abe, his roommate, is the only one who knows about Henry's condition. Across town, Detective Joe Martinez rushes out after a one-night stand and drives to the train crash site. The crash is reported to have been caused by the conductor having a heart attack, but Joe wants to confirm this by visiting the medical examiner. Before leaving, she finds Henry's old watch and takes it. Henry arrives home with Abe and tells him it's the first time he's died in a train accident. Abe invites him to the opera, but Henry isn't in the mood today after the accident. He still needs to find his purpose in life. He goes down to the basement and notes down the cause of his death while sharing with us that over the years, he has become a student of death. Not out of a morbid fascination, but purely for research. "I need to find a solution to this, a key to unlock this curse," he thinks as he looks at a photo of a girl he keeps on his desk. Henry works at the New York City medical examiner's office. He and Joe meet as he starts examining the conductor's body. As Joe waits, Henry notices the faint mark where her wedding ring used to be. He says he's sorry about her husband. Joe is surprised at first, thinking he's mistaking her for someone who lost family in the crash, but Henry means her husband. The tan line on her finger gave it away. It wasn't divorce. Divorced people don't wear their rings. Wearing the ring on a necklace shows her husband died recently, less than a year ago. Joe is shocked at how Henry figured it out. Before they can talk more, Henry reveals the conductor was killed by poison, changing the case from an accident to homicide. The detective asks him if he's sure and if this is his final statement. He replies that normally it would take 3 weeks to get the results, but he has a good track record. Henry then gets a mysterious phone call from a man asking how he survived the crash. The man says he has been looking for someone like Henry for a long time. Henry tries to play dumb, but the man says he knows Henry's secret. Terrified, Henry tells Abe they need to flee the country. Abe asks Henry if he's certain the caller knows his secret. Henry says the man basically confessed as much. He then pulls out different passports. Henry tells Abe they've gotten too comfortable. Staying put for so long is risky. Abe asks where they'll go this time, and Henry says it's Abe's choice. Henry stresses that staying off the grid and surviving is what matters. However, Abe doesn't want to leave. He argues that instead of running, finding out who's after them and what they want is better. Back at the police station, Joe carefully reviews the surveillance footage from the train station. She tells her team to look for anyone suspicious getting on or off the train, especially anyone who might have poisoned the conductor, like the forensics team suggested. While going through the video, she notices a man with a distinctive old pocket watch. Tracking his movements, she's shocked to realize it's Henry boarding the train with that watch. As her suspicions grow, Joe decides to bring Henry in for questioning. Henry arrives at work like normal and sees Lucas. He finds an envelope left for him with a note saying, "To Henry from your fan." Surprised, Henry asks Lucas how it got there. Lucas says no strangers were around, except Detective Joe, who had some questions about him. Inside the envelope, there's a photo of Henry with Abigail, triggering a flashback. In the flashback, Henry tells Abigail he loves her more than anything in the world. Abigail reminds him he will live forever, but he urges her to live in the moment, acknowledging that while he might go on, she will not. Lucas snaps Henry out of the memory. Thinking about it, Henry suspects the mysterious caller killed the conductor to prove Henry was like him, unable to die. His first step in unraveling the mystery is figuring out what type of poison was used. He then takes a blood sample from the conductor. Abe then injects him with it, and after returning from death, he figures out the poison was aconite, a very dangerous poison that would kill in a minute. When Henry and Abe arrive at the house, they find it surrounded by police officers with Detective Joe on the scene. He explains he got off the train before the incident happened and points out that if he was really the killer, he wouldn't have drawn attention to the conductor's poisoning. Finding his argument convincing, Joe lets him go for now, though she still considers him the prime suspect. Henry then goes back to his office, and he and Lucas search for the injection point. The killer must have somehow injected the victim. They then find it on the back of the ear and find a fingerprint with it. Henry gives Joe the fingerprint and trace it to a man called Hans, whose wife died while trying to get onto a subway. Joe and Henry go to Hans' house. When they get there, they find a dead rat outside. Detective Joe doesn't want to search further without a warrant, but Henry goes into the backyard anyway and finds flowers the suspect could have used to make the poison. Going inside the house, they find more evidence. Suddenly, the garage door opens. They quickly hide, watching the suspect through a window. Joe pulls out her gun and tells him to stop, but the suspect throws a jar at her, injuring her hand, then makes a run for it. Detective Joe fires at the suspect's car, but the poison from the jar that splashed on her hand starts to affect her. Henry quickly takes her to wash off her hand with a chemical to neutralize the poison. It turns out the suspect is a chemist. His descent into this dark path began 3 years ago when his wife died in a train accident caused by the same conductor who was recently poisoned. Now it's clear. His motive for revenge is rooted in the fact that the conductor who died was indeed responsible for the train accident that killed his wife. The suspect had been planning his vengeance for a long time. Henry is confused and doesn't understand. He wonders if the motive was purely revenge for his wife's death or if there's more to it. Initially, he thought the mysterious caller was behind this, but now he's not so sure. Maybe he was mistaken, and there's a different angle he still needs to consider. Searching the house further, they find discarded metro station blueprints in the trash. Strangely upside down and shaped like a fish, one blueprint reminds Henry of a similar zodiac painting on the wall at Grand Central. They rush to the station, realizing the suspect might be there. Henry notices how freezing the air is and deduces Hans's plan to release an airborne poison through the ventilation system. They head to the roof. Detective Joe suggests shutting down the station and evacuating everyone as they search. While on the roof, Joe is suddenly shot from behind by Hans. After shooting Joe, Hans tells Henry to come with him, as he is needed to carry the poison tank. He then forces Henry to pick up the tank containing the gas. Henry tries to reason with him, pleading that killing more people won't bring his wife back. Hans acknowledges this, but bitterly adds that even if it doesn't bring her back, maybe it will help those bastards on the train remember her. Henry tries to grab the gun, only to get shot himself. In a last-ditch effort, as Hans turns to get his poison, Henry pushes him, and they both fall from the building, their lives tragically ending. Joe wakes up with Henry by her side. She tells him she thought she saw both of them jump, but he tells her it's just the morphine talking. Henry then gets a call from the mysterious man who reveals he is just like him. He then tells him they are soulmates before hanging up. The story flashes back. Henry is a soldier and meets Abigail, who has just found an abandoned baby. The story then returns to the present day, where it's revealed that Abe is that same baby, raised by Henry as his own son.